जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी
जय गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी
गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी
जय गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी
यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जना
यशोदानन्दन व्रज
यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जना
जनरञ्जना यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जना
यमुना तीरावनचारी
यमुना तीरावनचारी
यमुना तीरावनचारी
यमुना तीरावनचारी
जय राधा माधव कुञ्ज बिहारी
जय राधा माधव कुञ्ज बिहारी
गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी
जय गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी
यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जना यमुना तीरावनचारी हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे
हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे
हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे
हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 सुदर्शना
जय जगन्नाथ जय बलदेवा जय सुभद्रा जय सुदर्शना
जय गौरानिताय 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 जय गौरानिताय
जय गौरानिताय गौरानिताय जय गौरानिताय
जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद
जय जय
जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्रजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर सदस्य श्रीमद अभय चरणारविंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्रजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर सदस्य श्रीमद भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय नामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्त वृंद की जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरिगोवर्धन की जय व्रजभूमि श्री वृंदावन धाम की जय मायापुर श्री नवद्वीप धाम की जय मथुरा धाम की जय द्वारका धाम की जय जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय गंगा माई की जय यमुना माई की जय भक्ति देवी की जय तुलसी महारानी की जय समवेत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय गौर भक्त प्रेम आनंदे हरि हरि बोल ऑल ग्लोरीज टू द assembled devotees हरे कृष्णा ऑल ग्लोरीज टू द assembled devotees हरे कृष्णा all glories to the assembled devotees hare krishna all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga jai Srila Prabhupada om namo bhagavate vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
om namo bhagavate vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudiraye नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवतः सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टकी ओम तत्सत् So Hare Krishna devotees, welcome for ISKCON Seshadripuram morning Srimad Bhagavatam class. Today we will be discussing third canto, status quo, chapter 20, conversation between Maitreya and Vidura, and we will be discussing verse number 33 and 34. I'll share the screen. So verse number 33. वितर्कतयो बहुधा तां संध्यां प्रमदाकृतिम् अभिसंभाव्य विश्रम्भात् पर्यप्रच्छन् कुमेदशाः वितर्कतयन्तो बहुधा तां संध्यां प्रमदाकृतिम् अभिसम्बन्धौ विश्रम्भात् पर्याप्रच्छन् कुमेदशः वितर्कयन्तो बहुधा तां संध्यां Pramadakritim abhisambhavya vishtrambat paryaprachan kumedashaha. Word by word meaning. Vitarkatayantaha, indulging in speculations. Bahuda, various kinds. Tam, her. Sandhyam, the evening twilight. Pramada, a young woman. Akritim, in the form of. Abhisambhavya, treating with great respect. Vishrambat, fondly. Paryaprachan, questioned. Ku Medashaha, wicked minded. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Indulging in various speculations about the evening twilight, which appeared to them endowed with the form of a young woman, the wicked minded Asuras treated her with respect and fondly spoke to her as follows. Go to the next one. Kasikashyasi Ramboru ko vartaste atra brahmini rupa dravina panyena durbhagan no vibadase. Kasikashyasi Ramboru ko vartaste atra brahmini rupa dravina panyena Durbhagan no vibadase. Kasikashyasi Ramboru ko vartaste atra brahmini rupa dravina panyena durbhagan no vibadase. Word by word meaning. Ka, who. Asi, are you. Kasya, belonging to whom. Asi, are you. Ramboru, oh pretty one. Kaha, what. Va, are. Artaha, object. Te, your. Atra, here. Brahmini, oh passionate lady. Rupa, beauty. Dravina, priceless. Panyena, with the commodity. Durbhagan, unfortunate. Na, us. Vibadase, you tantalize. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Who are you, O pretty girl? Whose wife or daughter are you? And what can be the object of your appearing before us? Why do you tantalize us, unfortunate as we are, with the priceless commodity of your beauty? Purport. The mentality of the demons in being enamored by the false beauty of this material world is expressed herein. The demoniac can pay any price for the skin beauty of this material world. They work very hard all day and night, but the purpose of their hard work is to enjoy sex life. Sometimes they misrepresent themselves as karma yogis, not knowing the meaning of the word yoga. Yoga means to link up with the Supreme Personality of Godhead or to act in Krishna consciousness. A person who works very hard, no matter in what occupation, and who offers the results of the work to the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is called a Karma Yogi. Om Ajnana-timirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshur-unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadanti Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhu bhayevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaurabhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so this verse is coming in the series of discussions which is happening between Vidura and Maitreya. So, in the beginning of this chapter, Viduraji, he is asking questions to Maitreya. This continuation of these questions from even earlier chapters. So, in this chapter also, he is continuing with a different set of questions. And here he is asking, so how did Lord Brahma, Manu, how did they go about creating the universe for the conditioned soul? So what was happening? How did they do it? So this was the question that he was asking. At that time, it describes about how the Lord created this material universe for the conditioned soul, and how he gave existence to Lord Brahma from his navel, and then how Lord Brahma started the creation process. That is the secondary creation, how he started the creation process. So in the process, this section basically deals with the creation of the kind of demoniac people. So first the Yakshas, the Rakshasas, they were created, and then they are actually coming to what do you call coming to coming to have a conjugal relationship with Brahma himself. So that means these were Rakshasas, were supposed to be from a bodily concept men, but these Rakshasas were lusting after Lord Brahma himself. That means, so here it is written, even Prabhupada writes in one of those things, even, so that means Bhagavatam is not something which is like, which is a concocted stuff. Bhagavatam, this all comes to talk about the reality of what Bhagavatam is. Bhagavatam is not some concocted story where something is just only the right things needs to be spoken about, and then certain things should not be spoken. No, Bhagavatam is actually talking about all those things that really happened at a particular point in time, and all in relation to the Lord, how things got how things were taken forward in relation to the Lord. So therefore, these were actually homosexuals, right? If you are lusting after a man lusting after a man is something like, it's a homosexuality, and this was spoken, 5,000 years back. And therefore, what to speak of, today we are talking about all this stuff that, this is something as though these are new, but they are not new. So this has happened, and Brahma is running towards Lord Vishnu and trying to say, please protect me, you are the only person who can protect me. So Lord Vishnu actually therefore says, okay, you give up this, you throw away this impure body, because he created these demons. So we need to understand, when you say give up this body, does that mean Brahma died? So there are explanation given by Acharyas. For example, Sridhara Swami, he had explained that it is not that when the Lord says give up your body, that doesn't mean he is to give the physical body what Lord Brahma had to give his physical body. It is to give the mentality. So actually, if you really see, when we are doing some creation, or when we are involved in any work, right? If you have, generally the thing is, when we are involved, we are also involved with the emotion with that work. So that is very natural. So therefore, that's why even we are driven by our various gunas, and those gunas also direct us to take a particular kind of activity, right? So Krishna says, no, guna karma vibhaga shaga. That means these two are goes hands in hand. Whatever is your nature, according to the nature, you will also take up a job. So you cannot be like, it's very difficult, but we will talk about that aspect of how you have to be actually away from your nature and perform your duty. That is what Prabhupada is actually writing. In this purport, but we'll come to that. In the meantime, so this concept of the guna goes with the work that we are doing. So when you are creating such, either passionate, rajasic or tamo aspects, then Brahma in some form and shape is also having such, what do you call, guna, which sort of comes into him, right? Brahma is not above the modes of material nature. We are aware that only the Supreme Personality of Godhead is above all of the three modes of nature. But Brahma being the first created being, he represents the Jiva. So, and therefore there is some element of guna, which maybe we will be too much engrossed, but Brahma may not be so much engrossed, but there is also even a subtle consciousness of either ignorance or what do you call, passion comes, then it affects the thing. So Krishna is saying, therefore, you give up this mentality, because he created these ignorant people. He actually created them from his buttocks. These demons. He created them from the buttocks, and the mode was more passionate and ignorance, a combination of this, and therefore he's saying you give up this body. So therefore, when Lord Brahma gave up this body, so-called body, or in other words, the way of mentality, that sort of created another aspect in this whole creation, which is basically the twilight. So that is the time between when the sun is setting and then the night time arises, the intermingling period, or the period where both of these coincide. That is the twilight time. And these asuras speculated, means they actually imagined, they fantasized, right? These things are all there in Bhagavatam. It's not like, Bhagavatam only gives rosy picture. It gives a clear picture of everything that is happening. So there, these people are fantasizing, and Prabhupada writes, this evening time, morning time is for Brahma Murta. We say there the consciousness is clear, but as we keep coming down in the evening, it turns more into the lusty nature. Therefore, they even say, okay, how many rounds you chanted in the early morning, then you give more marks when you are actually trying to measure, or rather when you are trying to keep a track of your sadhana. They say if you do your chanting in the early morning, you are given some higher marks, and then the afternoon means little lower marks. You did your major rounds in the evening, you get much lower marks, even though you did your 16 rounds. The quality, the so-called quality of the chanting is affected, because the guna of the evening is there. So in that sense, the evening starts these lusty propensities, and particularly when we talk of the demons, like they are just waiting for the evening there where they can indulge in the sexual relationships with the opposite sex. So this is there. So in this context, they actually imagine this twilight to be the form of a beautiful girl, and then these fellows are actually, if I can say, blabbering, right? They are trying to glorify this lady and trying to get some material enjoyment out of this fantasization. So they are asking, okay, this girl, there are so much descriptions about about the girl, and what all of that's there. But maybe in the previous and the next verse, these things will be there. But we will, Prabhupada in this purport talk specifically about that the demons mentality is enamored by the false beauty of this material world is expressed. That's what Prabhupada is saying. But therefore we only need to understand, we are in this material world, and we have got this the body and human body is supposed to be more what do you call, more sophisticated, right? So while it has got the facility to actually come to the point of self-realization, it also has that ability to get deeper and deeper into this sense gratification. Maybe the highest sense gratification can still be attained only in the human body. Of course, if you leave out the higher planetary systems and all that, in this material world, particularly in this earth, I am talking about where we are residing, the human body has the maximum sophistication of gratification, and also the highest ability to actually realize the self. So both are there in this human body, and therefore, and also the ability to discriminate is there in this human body. Like, the combination of the five senses, the subtle body, including the mind, intelligence, and false ego. All of this put together gives the ability for the man to either catapult into the higher sphere of spiritual existence, or go down further into the human, or remain in the human existence, or come down into a lower forms of life. But by and large, if you see overall, the humans have a better, or rather a sophisticated ability to have a gratification of the senses. So for example, when you say, like, eating is the same, a dog may eat in the street while a human may eat in a very fine dining, so-called fine dining restaurant. Naturally, the gratification comes out of it may be different. The purpose it serves is the same. That means your hunger is satisfied, but the the gratification that is perceived, that means we try to build it up in such a way that the gratification becomes exponentially higher. That is possible in the human life. And therefore, here Prabhupada is talking about this tendency of the demons. So it is not just in this anything to do with only the the sex aspect of it, but it has got to do with every aspect of the sense gratification. And therefore, this is a very clear sign of mentality, that of gratification, and one needs to be very, very, very conscious of it. The point is, the more we are drawn into this sense gratificatory process, the more we are getting away from the signs of self-realization, and more we are getting into the mode of suffering. There are many wonderful verses to talk about this. We will try and see if we can touch upon a few of them. And then Prabhupada is saying, right, the so-called people simply work very hard to enjoy this sex life. It adds to not just sex life, means whatever is the result of the sex life. It includes the house. There is one nice verse which Prabhupada says, the man, once he gets into this what do you call, attraction for the opposite sex, then he marries, or whatever it is, and from there then the expansion happens. Then you have children, and then the needs to have more comfort start there. Then you work very hard to Prabhupada used to quote all these things from the this what is this the Chanakya Niti, from one of Chanakya's, this one Prabhupada used to quote, this very famous Graha Medini. He used to speak about that. So it says, then you get sucked up and more and more, and you keep on expanding, right? So through the wife, we keep expanding our needs, right, from the bodily thing. So when you say this, it is even the children, the house, everything is part of that, what you call sex life, that creates these things. So like that it is mentioned. And then Prabhupada talks specifically about yoga means to link with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he's cautioning about people who in the name of Karma Yoga are more getting into this concept of Graha Medini, right? He doesn't mention Graha Medini, but he's talking about people who, if you see many people, we have also experienced this whenever we are preaching. There are people who will say, no, why to get too much into all this, this reading of these scriptures, or trying to understand or following all these principles, why to go to temple and all. You do your karma, that is good enough. So that's what they say. And then when you go explore a little deeper and try to ask them, what do you mean by this karma, do your karma, their understanding is very, very limited, to the sense that they are saying, you do your duty correctly, So that also looks philosophically, I do your duty. So what is duty defined in the scriptures is something different. And but if you just think, oh yeah, the duty, that's what the scripture says, you may think. But if you try to really go further into, what do you mean by duty? If you ask him this question, he will say, duty means what? Serving your wife, your children, your office, your, uh, whatnot. Like, which will all include satisfying all of these people, whatever is their desires. So they say, no, I need to, I'm so much stuck with my work, I need to do this for whatever, 12 hours, 15 hours, and I need to bother, take care of my needs of my wife, who's having a lot of gratificationary process, or it the vice versa, the wife saying, I need to take care of the husband's needs, and those needs are not simply very divine needs or whatever, it's got to do with so much of lusty relationships, to do with so much of like, material wants, for which they sophisticate, complicate, and then this person has to keep on serving those needs. And then they understand that, this is actually karma yoga. That means doing your activity, doing your duty. As a wife, I have to do this duty to my husband, and the husband will be engaging in all sorts of nonsense, and my duty is to serve that nonsense. Or the vice versa, where the husband feels, I need to serve my wife because that is my duty. I have married her. I have to do this, and I have to give her whatever, keep her happy. Keeping happy is my duty, and whatever nonsense she wants to do, then I am supposed to be supporting in all that, and spending my time. So I mean, I am slightly exaggerating, but if you really go deeper into it, that's what it is. There is nothing beyond this. So people are get caught up, and that expands into that. Therefore, your children, and then then your relatives. Sometimes even the nation, where nation is not always engaged in very nice activities. It is the leaders of the nation. They don't have any philosophical understanding. They are just simply propagating the how to improve the bodily situation, and everybody working very hard for the, what do you call, the objective of the nation. The objective in the first place is wrong, and everybody says, this is my kartavya, this is my duty, like that. So they just keep going on like this. So this is happening, and therefore Prabhupada is saying, that is not karma yoga, that is not yoga. He says, karma yoga, he says, a person who works very hard, no matter in what occupation, and who offers a result of the work in the service of the Supreme Personality of God, Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, is called a karma yogi. So that is the clear definition of what is a karma yogi. Sometimes, we may not be able to take up perfect Brahmanical activities because we may not be having the Brahmanical guna. That means not directly engaging in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, because of the guna, maybe in ignorance, or because we're driven by passion, we may be more attracted to work in various fields of activities. So how do you still come to this platform of devotional life, or how you come to the platform of spirituality? Therefore, it is mentioned, therefore, you actually do that work, it's okay, but engage in that activity and dedicate the result of that work to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it's an indirect way, in one sense, to say that, my focus is in this creation. Like here, Lord Brahma, if you see, he's doing this activity because it's the order of the Lord, but in the process he is engaging in that activity, and he is affected by the little bit of a karmic mentality. But at the end of the day, he is doing it for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in a roundabout way, it becomes a devotional service. But directly, he is not doing like, direct devotional service. He is more involved in his own need of wanting to create, like, so one who really has such deep desire to be a creator and all that, then you get this facility to be a creator. And Brahma is the highest of that, where, highest position of creator. And okay, whoever was the jiva, he was given that authority. Okay, now you come and create this. Have this feeling of sense of achievement of creation. And okay, in the process, when there's a problem, we run to the Lord, but we still somehow get the feeling that, I am the doer. But Brahma, of course, many times he says, I am not the doer, there is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But even as we are engaging, or he is engaging, there is always this element of slightly subtly getting into this concept of me and, mine kind of thinking. So how about us, right? Even though we try to do such things, there is always these problems. Therefore, it is very important that we should keep reminding ourselves of this knowledge that is given in Srimad Bhagavad Gita. And then that way, while we are engaging, we are able to keep ourselves focused, right? So that uh, uh, we are able to come to this real platform of performing duty without attachment. So let us look at a few verses from Srimad Bhagavad Gita. I'm basically looking at second chapter, a few verses, and then of course the fifth chapter, which basically talks about Karma Yoga. So I mean, I will just go through a few verses, not in elaboration, but we will just see. So Krishna says, I will start with this verse, with this 56. He says, one who is not disturbed in mind even amidst the threefold miseries, or elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear and anger, is called a sage of steady mind. So you start with that point of being a steady mind, or sthitadhira, like that. We will start with that verse. And then if you go to the next one, it says, in the material world, one who is unaffected by whatever good or evil he may obtain, neither prizing it nor despising it, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge. That means, how to come to that perfect knowledge? You need to perform your duty without getting too much affected by the emotion of the work. That is there. Then, one who is able to withdraw his senses from sense object as the tortoise draws his limbs within the shell is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness. So that is the knack of doing the thing. That means, while we are performing a duty, we should not be keeping our senses attached to that duty. We will see a little more further. Though the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, the taste of sense object remains. But ceasing such engagement by experiencing a higher taste is fixed in consciousness. So this is the beauty. Therefore, how is it that you can keep yourself restrained like a tortoise? You need to do an activity. So you need to put your limbs out and then get in connection with the material nature. So the minute when you connect to the material nature, then all the gunas take over, right? That happens. But the knack is, while we are in touch with that material nature, our conscious should be the dissociating that touch. That means taking it to the higher strata of raising the consciousness to a higher taste, which is basically on Krishna. So if you are able to keep Krishna in mind and touch the material aspect of our activity, then you are actually protected. That is something which we need to understand. Even Krishna says, right, he says, Krishna says to Arjuna, you fight, Arjuna, but you should always remember me and fight. That Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. That means you are engaged in the activity, but remember me. Mam anusmara yudhyacha. That is the word. That means you remember me and fight. So that's the principle. Here also, it says, though the embodied soul may be restrained from sense enjoyment, the taste for sense object remains, which will basically propel us to do this activity. Right? You can't simply withdraw and sit in one secluded place and say, like, no, I will now completely disassociate from activity. You cannot be like that. You are forced to act. And when you are forced to act, how should you act? That's the question. Therefore, but ceasing such engagement by experiencing a higher taste is fixed in consciousness. The senses are so strong and impetus, O Arjuna, that they forcibly carry away the mind even of a man of discrimination who is endeavoring to control them. So, activity is important. You will be forced to act. But when you act, these are the things that we need to keep in mind. This activity may propel us into this mode of ignorance or mode of passion or even mode of goodness. None of them are really a great thing. You should go rise above that to the mode of Shuddha Sattva or pure goodness. So we need to be mindful of these things that we are said and how we can restrain ourselves like that. One who restrains his senses, keeping them under full control and fixes his consciousness upon me is known as a man of steady intelligence. Okay. So we will now go to the fifth chapter. And in 62 also we will see, it says, while contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them, and from such attachment, lust develops, and from lust anger arises. So the sequence of how when you get attached to your work, what all happens, which actually pushes us deeper into the consciousness of I am the body, actually is elaborated here, and how one need to be keeping away from such attachment to the object, attachment to the activity is also given, that if you are able to develop the higher taste, then even if you are engaged in that activity, you are not actually getting sucked up into this whole thing of attachment to the object, and then which further moves us into the position of a lust, and which further moves us into the position of anger. And he says, from anger, complete delusion arises, and from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. And when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool. Means we are actually then forgetting that I am not the body. We even though we try to think I am the body, the more we are sucked up into this, we get into anger, then it becomes so much of obsession that how I couldn't do it, why it didn't happen, I should have done it, the more I, then we forget that I am the spirit soul, I have got nothing to do with this activity. If it happened because of the action of the three modes of material nature, and if it didn't also, it is because of these three aspects, and I have got nothing to do with it. It is very clearly said, the soul which is sitting inside the body is not the doer, and he is not causing any action. Everything is performed by the three modes of material nature. But we are tending to forget that, and we are thinking I, who's the body, who's the actual doer, and any results, positive or negative, is completely related to me, and therefore I feel this is the way we are thinking. But here we are cautioned, no, don't ever come into that kind of a thinking mode. Now let's go to the 5th chapter, and we will see some of these verses. See, similar things said in different ways in by Krishna, so that it goes deeper into our head. If you look at the 10th verse in the 5th chapter, it says, one who performs his duty without attachment, surrendering the results onto the Supreme Lord, is unaffected by sinful actions, as the lotus leaf is untouched by water. So this is the aspect of what we are discussing, Karma Yoga. You do your activity without attaching yourself to the results of it, but actually offer all these results to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The yogis, abandoning attachment, act with body, mind, intelligence, and even with the senses, only for the purpose of purification. We need to act. When we act, we get this, you cannot artificially renounce. That's the point. But you need to practice acting, but at the same time not being involved in that activity. This is just like when you are in school, or when you are, whatever knowledge you are doing. It's not like when you are sitting in the class, you just get everything. Then you need to come home and practice that, right? You make your children, okay, now this concept you have understood in the classroom, now go and sit and perform some exercises on that. You do some exercises so that you can apply the concept there. The same aspect, when you understand this knowledge, then when you are actually in the field of activity, how do you apply that knowledge into this activity and then practice? So that's very nicely given here. While you are practicing, that purifies. That's when you say purify here, it is not like I am dirty, I am purified. No, my consciousness is now originally under the thing that I am the doer, but now I am doing that activity, but I am trying to keep away from the attachment to this activity, and therefore there is this purification which is happening, right? So that's the cleansing which is happening. So the yogis actually engage like that. So don't artificially renounce. Do the activity. Of course, there are what activities can be done, what activities cannot be done. We cannot do vikarma, activities which are prohibited from doing. Don't get into that. But we need to do activities which are karma, to come to the point of akarma. That means acting without attaching, without getting the results of that karma of that act. That is what is the objective. But we do karma. When you do the karma, of course, it's all also relative. Like, not everybody need to be, karma. There are some people who are fully into direct Shuddha Sattva, they are in direct service of the Lord, and that's where we need to come to. But to the mass of people who are actually trying to do through the Karma Yoga process, this is explained. Not for someone who is already in the platform of doing direct devotional service. For him, there is nothing to do with karma at all. It's nothing. He's already in a karma stage. So why to worry about it? But those who are in karma stage, these things have been spoken. That you do your activity, but and cleanse yourself by offering the results of your activity to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then the steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace because he offers the results of all activities to me. Whereas a person who is not in union with the divine, who is greedy for the fruits of his labor, becomes entangled. Very important. So the results, when you do this, what happens has been explained. Such a person who is actually performing the activity and offering the results to the Lord, he attains full peace. He is completely happy. Actually, we are doing activity to be happy, right? Sometimes we forget that. We are thinking by offering the results we will become unhappy. But here it says only by offering the results you will become happy. Otherwise you will not become happy. But on the contrary, the person who is just doing it for his own gratification, whereas a person who is not in union with the divine, who is greedy for the fruits of the labor, become entangled. That means he has got into that major mess, we can say. Entangled means he gets into this mess from which he doesn't know how to get out. This is the problem with someone who is not dedicating it to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So let's look at the next one. When the embodied living being controls his nature and mentally renounces all actions, he resides happily in the city of 9 gates. That means the body which has the 9 gates. That soul is so happy who is sitting inside because he is able to control his mentality and renounce all actions by residing happily in the city of the 9 gates, neither working nor not causing work to be done. So this is another. When you say neither working, that doesn't mean they don't work at all. Like just like they say, when it is said, like when the Lord said you give up the body, where Sridhara Swami explains, he is not like he physically died. Like the same thing here. When you say you renounce your work, it is not like you physically stop working. You renounce that work mentally. You give up that mentality of I am the doer. I am causing the work to happen. Not that. That's the word used. Neither working nor causing work to be done. Because we don't cause the work to be done. That is very clearly given elsewhere. That the soul does not cause any work to be done. It is done by the modes of material nature. The embodied spirit, master of the city of his body, does not create activity. This is the verse I was speaking about. Nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature. See, this is very clearly given. Therefore, even though we may speculate we are the doer, the Lord is saying, no, you are not the doer. It is all done by the modes of material nature. You have nothing, you are neither the cause, neither the result of your action. You simply act. Nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge. So this is very important. When, however, one is enlightened with the knowledge by which naissance is destroyed, then his knowledge reveals everything, as the sun lights up everything in the daytime. So when one is purified through this process of performing activity and giving up the results of the activity, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he actually comes to the state of knowledge, at which point in time he can actually be very peacefully situated, and he knows everything as it is. It even talks about, like later Krishna also says, through this reformation process, one is able to understand the self very clearly. He is able to understand the Supreme Personality very clearly. When one's intelligence, mind, faith and refuge are all fixed in the Supreme, then one becomes fully cleansed of misgivings through complete knowledge and thus proceed straight on the path of liberation, what I just now said, which leads us directly to the point of going back to Godhead. That's the most important point, and that is the purpose of all of our efforts so far. That our objective is to go back to Godhead, not simply sit here and get caught in the cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease. The humble sages, by virtue of true knowledge, sees with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog eater. That it talks about the status of such a person. He is no more caught up in the concept of body, that means me and my body, but he is able to see everything in relation to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There's one more beautiful verse I wanted to. Ehi samparsha jaboga dukkha yonayo yona yevate adi antavantaha kaunteya na teshu ramate buddhaha. This is a very nice verse. It says, an intelligent person does not take part in the source of misery which are due to contact with material senses. O son of Kunti, such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise man does not delight in them. This, if you are able to underline and keep in our head, right? Whatever, sometimes when we are getting into some kind of a gratification mode, if you are able to understand, this will also come to pass. Same thing, when there is some kind of a distress, right? We are in the heat of that distress. Always remember, this will also come to pass, because they have a beginning and they have an end. So don't get too much engrossed in that happiness, jubilation, because when that ends, it leads to misery. The same thing, when there is a distress, don't get too much into that distress, because that will also have an end. What is the pointing of going so deep in and then having to come out of it again? Just be aloof. That's the point. This is all. See, Krishna has given so very beautifully, just that we are not able to get it, the whole thing. If we are able to practice these kind of things very simply in our life, day-to-day life, right on driving in the, in Bangalore city traffic, and you suddenly see so much of cars in front. If you are frustrated, you start shouting in your mind, calm down. This will also come to pass, right? This will also come to pass. This is something very simple. We just do this and then you become calm. Put a nice lecture of Srila Prabhupada or a nice kirtan and just enjoy the being there on the traffic. It takes you away from your hard work in the office. You are there in the traffic. You can always tell, I'm still in the road, right? Sometimes it helps also. Not to say that you should not do your work, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, in that situation, that's the best I can do. And so let it be that way, that way. So I will end here. It is 8:57. If there are any questions, any comments, most welcome. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, I have one question.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, actually, so when we are working or with the family members or anybody, so if something they have done right, so immediately I'm getting angry, and then that angry I will shout at the people sometime. Then later I will realize, oh my God, I should not supposed to do like this. Then so how to control that one? How to make it myself calm in that moment? So shouting that moment and then later going and sorry asking, I don't think it is not feasible.
Correct.
One time okay, two time okay, but it happens for frequently. So why I'm getting anger so much?
Yes. So different ways we can answer this question. First is, as I said, you are now getting this knowledge, right? We are getting this knowledge that, we are not the doer, or someone else who caused that trouble to you is not the doer. So it is providence which is actually doing it. This is knowledge first. So if you have the knowledge, that itself brings down some 30-40% of the anger that we have against that person who caused that problem for you, or who you assumed that they are wrong or whatever like that. That is one. And second, from a practical, this is also practical. What I said is, this knowledge is very clearly said. With this knowledge only you can conquer over whatever. Sometimes we give some techniques, but the techniques which is not backed by knowledge is useless. You see, the technique one day will be overcome by the lust or anger that is there. We are talking. The second aspect we spoke here also, that how this thing develops, how the anger comes. It comes because of our attachment to a particular object. From that attachment, lust develops, and from lust, anger develops. That means I am attached to a particular concept in my life, and that has kept so much of obsession in my head. And when someone is trying to transgress into that, I get anger. If you get angry, why you are so much attached to that particular thing? Someone does something which is against that one, you get angry.
Yes.
Then using the knowledge, I should say, why am I so attached to this particular thing? You may say, for example, you may want a particular thing to be kept in a particular place, and your child, I'm assuming, you may, just an example, there is a child which goes and takes that and keeps it anywhere. We immediately start shouting, what the hell, why are you doing like this? Don't you know it has to be kept there? The problem is not the child taking it. The problem is I am so obsessed with that object being there. How does it matter? You see, so that means if you are able to look at things in a more objective way, then you can actually tell the child, Baba, why don't you keep it there? It looks nice there, no? That way you can say, but why are you just shouting? Because you are attached to that object being there rather than looking at this, oh, this is my child. Why do I abuse this child? That doesn't come. My obsession with that object being there is what is the important thing there. That is the second thing. Third thing, more directly, that means as a process, I will tell you, whenever we feel like immediately responding to something, or rather, responding is not a right word. Responding means it is considered. Considered action as responding. If you want to react, right, the reaction means you don't think about the consequences. Therefore, what we are saying is simply hold on to your thought for a couple of, you can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in your mind, and then you act. Like when someone does something to you, which you immediately, you want to react to that by simply shouting, just give a pause. Give in your mind 1, 2, 3, like you can just hold your teeth inside, but keep your mouth closed and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you try to respond to that person. You will actually see that it doesn't come out the way you would have originally reacted. These are some simple techniques we can try. Don't immediately react, because the mind is hot when we see that thing happening. Just give it a few seconds to cool down, and then you respond to that person for whatever action they have done or they didn't do. Then you will see your expression of your mood will be slightly very diplomatic in a very nice manner, which doesn't create that kind of a situation where you have shouted and then you have to go and take apology later. That will not happen.
But the point is, Prabhu, here, so that only I am losing it actually. Sometimes I'm getting present. Okay, yes, I'm reacting. I'm going to shout. So that time I'm holding myself. Sometimes I'm not holding. I don't know. I'll speak because that anger, it will come out. So how to practice? Okay.
So you have understood. You are also, sometimes you are able to hold back and you are able to see the better results. You agree to that?
Yes.
Okay. Now you understand the concept and you have also seen results by using that concept. Now it's a question of practice.
Yes.
Okay. And so that means the more you practice, the better you will become in anything in life, right? If you have to use your keyboard, initially you struggled with that keyboard, you will search where is A, where is B, like that. But over a period of time, it becomes part of your system, right? You don't see where is A, it comes. It needs practice.
Yes,
that's the word I use here, purification process. You have to practice, and as you practice, be rest assured you will be able to succeed.
Got it. It's very clear. Yeah. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Correct. But you are on the right path. See, one is when you know what you are doing is right, then you already have one half the battle. That's the opposite also. When I don't know what does that do, I am already in 90% of the problem. If I know the problem, half the battle is won. Then it's about dealing with it, and that requires a little bit of a practice. Over a period of time, you will get there.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you all for
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam, Prabhu.
Prabhuji, like as you mentioned in the class that Brahma was followed by these yakshas, rakshasas. They wanted to have some relationship. So how do you understand this? What was the reason for that relation to be created, Prabhuji? Like,
So as I said, these demons were created by Brahma in a passionate mode, and generally also he created it, those fellows from the buttocks, and along with it he also created night. All these things are darkness. From the excretory part, those things has its own effect of the, like, so your work performed in what consciousness also has an effect on the work, right? That guna, you are aware of that, right? I don't want to go deeper into the guna, and then the result, when you act in very passionate mode, then the result of that work is also passionate, right? There's so many things, like, so therefore your your mood of the action has to be very clear. But in this case, Brahma has created these demons in a mood which is more to do with the ignorance and maybe a little bit of a lust or whatever, and therefore the product which came out is also like that. Of course, he did it as a service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the larger canvas. Let's not go there. Because that the Lord wanted that to happen, and therefore he had to get into this passionate mood, and he created these demons from his buttocks. And the product which was created now are completely in that lusty mood, and that is why they are having such tendencies of homosexuality. So how do we understand? Yes, therefore, how do you perform your action? Your action should not be performed in a ignorant way or in a lusty way. This is important. Like, we talked about this, right? Even the Mataji's question, why I get so angry? Because my mindset is in a very passionate mode. That is why I get angry. If I am in a sattvic mode, I will not get angry. I will still be able to communicate my displeasure to the other person, which is always there. But how do I communicate it? Because I am in a sort of a passionate mode, and therefore the outcome of that passion is also little hard words or very involved words. This is true of all of us, right? All of us behave like that, and the understanding is very clear. It's given in the Bhagavad Gita. Why our actions are like this? Because we are passionate. Then how can I correct it? Simply change your mentality. Try practicing. It doesn't come overnight. Practice. The same thing Krishna is telling Brahma here. Give up your body, right? Because your creation happened in a mentality which is basically in a passionate way. These fellows are chasing you. Now give up that mentality. Then he goes on to create many wonderful things later after this Krishna's advice of give up your body, give up your mentality. Then he creates something very beautiful. So those things will come in the future. Therefore, your mindset of how you perform an activity, in what mode it is, the activity is also having that thing. To the extent that Prabhupada is writing, when you have to give birth to a child, your mind should be actually not in that lusty mood of enjoying the opposite sex. Then the child will also be lusty, or rather, in a very passionate mood. That is why the Prabhupada writes, I was reading the previous verses, so it says, Garbha Agataka Samsthan. That means you perform this activity of begetting a child after performing this. That means the mood is actually to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In that mood, when a person actually procreates, that child will be a devotee child. So this is what it is, that everything is driven by these gunas, and one need to try and refine the way how we do our activities. Try to be in the sattva mode, and which will lead it to this Shuddha sattva mode, and do everything as a service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Have the knowledge in the background, always keep remembering this back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Then we will be able to get it, get the act together correctly. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. Very clear. Thank you, Dandapur. Jai.
Okay, so we will close the session. Thank you very much for patiently hearing. There are any shortcomings. It's unfortunate I don't have those ability. So please bear with me. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare
Thanks for wonderful class.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.